Kona combined long reach and short stays long before most brands caught wind of it being the cool thing to do. So we were almost surprised to see that the redesign process wasn't winning the longest or the slackest bragging contests. What'd that mean here in Southwest Utah? Had Kona found a sweet spot for handling geometry?
Really easy bike to know where to put it. As soon as you thought about where you wanted to go, you were already there. It was almost like an extension of you and your thoughts. Telepathic bike.
This would be one of my favorite bikes of this whole trip, and there's intangibles you can bring in about any given bike, right? Like it had the right components, or it was your biorhythms were in the right place for a given day. But for me, this was the most easily adaptable, just jump on it, ride it. Everything felt intuitive, right where it needed to be.
And this is a bike that seems like it's more of like a bruiser, right? Like,
yeah,
you're gonna kind of like lug it uphill and then it's just going to bomb down the hills. But like, it actually pedals really efficiently.
You don't feel any bob coming from the rear shock. It definitely felt pretty supportive to me, but at the same time, I did notice it wasn't the lightest bike when I was hefting it up, different ledges and stuff like that, but you also get the benefit that you know where it's going to go, you know what it's going to do, so it's not as though it has any sort of indecisive moment to it.
The pedaling platform was solid. It's in this category of bike where we have all these big bruiser 150 millimeter travel 29-inch bikes that a few years ago there were just a couple of, and now there's a ton of. And I expect those bikes to feel big and to be a handful and tight stuff. And this wasn't. This was very easy to adapt to, very easy to, you could, and slow speed technical riding, you could just, punch it up those little nuggety, ledgy ups, and at the same time, flat, sandy, rock-strewn, garbagey corners, it would just go where you pointed it. The front was really easy to put right where I needed it to be at any given time.
Yeah.
And some of the other bikes that were in this same kind of geometry, same travel range, same spec basically, same tires, felt a little harder to adapt to. And this just felt, mom's apple pie familiar.
The position it puts you in is just, it sets you up for like confidence, I think. But then once I got it into the like really steep parts of the downhill and like these successive hits, I felt a little bit like the rear suspension wasn't keeping up.
That's fair.
Like it's not the most sophisticated rear suspension,
Nope.
which, I guess that's fine. Like if the bike sets you up for confidence, I don't know, I just felt like I was aiming for those lines and then hitting them and then getting bounced around a little bit more than I want it to be.
I'll totally concede that. Like I don't think it's the most sophisticated suspension we have here. Like especially if you compare it to say the Yeti SB150 or the Ibis Ritmo, where those bikes have this amazing rear suspension that not only does it pedal incredibly well, but it's like plush and tractable and can do everything from low speed to super high speed damage. This didn't feel that way. It felt a little bit rampy, and it felt a little less responsive in some of that high speed success with just smashing down it kind of hits. But at the same time, I kind of didn't care.
Another way to describe it is that it felt like a bike. The fancy suspension models we're describing don't feel like bikes. They feel like detached magic carpet rides. With the 153, you felt the trail, but the planted feel and reactive handling was good enough that we didn't care.
The chassis was this nice stiff frame, and the whole package, like if you just take the bike as a single entity, like this is the bike, get on it and ride. I just thought that it was the most comfortable and familiar bike that we had here.
This is a pretty big, long bike. It's a long travel 29er. It shouldn't necessarily be that playful.
Right.
But it really is. Like it's a poppy bike. It's a rampy suspension, so you can dig into that shock and give it some boost, and it likes lips, and like the bike likes to jump and play and stuff.
Yeah,
like it's actually really responsive.
It's still pretty well-rounded, even though it has this very solid feel to it.
What'd you guys think about spec? This is the DL, so it's their highest end version. It's a $6,000 bike.
Really nice front and rear suspension for the price, I thought. And XO1. XO1 shifter, rear derailleur. It was nice to see that. 170 dropper. I thought the whole thing was really well thought out in terms of the spec you got for the price you paid. It would have been nice at that price to have carbon fiber wheels, but that's also probably getting a little bit baggy.
For, buy it in a shop bike, it seemed like this was a really smart spec. You're not wasting money on stuff you don't need. It's got an alloy bar and stem, but they're decent, and somebody with their own specific preferences is going to upgrade that anyway.
Yeah.
Really nice to see little attention to detail stuff like 200 millimeter rotors, front and rear on all sizes of bikes.
Code brakes,
Code
super
brakes,
strong
Code
brake.
RSC brakes,
Yeah.
nonetheless.
And high-end suspension. I think like they put the money where it counts, I think, on these.
They do, and it's pretty solid all the way around. Descendant carbon crank. It's a nicely spec'd bike that's really well thought out.
Kona's done a great job at like really prioritizing standover, not just for standover's sake, but for long dropper posts' sake.
Yeah.
And it's cool that they spec a 170 on all sizes except for the smallest one, which is a 150. More than pretty much everybody else out there. It's a pretty cool thing.
Well thought out.
So this bike is intuitive, it's maneuverable, it's really easy to place it where you want. Part of that may be to its really short chainstay. It's got a 425 millimeter chainstay.
That's short for a 29er.
That's short
Wicked
for
short.
a 150 plus millimeter 29er. But at the same time, it limits you a little bit. You can only run 2.3 inch rear tire. Maybe you can run a bigger tire, but you start running into clearance issues when you go bigger than that.
I'll forgive it that. I'll forgive it the tire clearance. 29 by 2.3 DHF rear tires, big meaty tire. I don't feel like I need anything bigger than that on the back of a bike like this. It would be nice maybe to have the clearance, but I'll take the short chainstay. I thought the way they balanced that with the seat angle, the wheelbase, the rest of the geometry is part of what makes this bike sing.
And that's just that, a bike that makes you sing, or at the very least grin. The overall feel of the Process 153 CRDL29 was unshakably complete. From standover to handling to fit to spec, the one with the bike feel was an absolute standout. Be sure to check out the full review, as well as other Bible reviews on bikemag.com.